It was supposed to be just another blind date, one of those awkward, forgettable evenings arranged by well-meaning friends who couldn't stand to see you alone. But when she walked into that restaurant, every noise in the room seemed to fade. The CEO, Ethan Cole, known for his cold precision and spotless suits, found himself frozen, not because of her beauty, but because of something else, something he couldn't name. She looked like she had nothing, an old coat, hair slightly out of place, and shoes that had clearly seen better days. Yet the moment she smiled shyly, he realized he was looking at everything he'd ever been searching for. He didn't know her story yet, but he knew, deep down, it was going to change him forever. Ethan had built his empire on logic, discipline, and control. Emotions were for the weak, he always told himself. His world was contracts, profits, and deadlines, a universe where love didn't belong. But that night, as he sat across from her in that quiet corner booth, the world he knew began to crack. Her name was Clara Hayes. She apologized for being late, her voice trembling as she explained that the bus broke down. He noticed her hands rough from work, perhaps and a faint trace of nervousness she tried to hide behind a smile. Most people would have seen a woman who came unprepared for a date with a man like him. But Ethan saw something else: honesty, grace, a quiet strength that no amount of wealth could ever buy. The waiter arrived, but Ethan barely looked at the menu. He watched as Clara studied the prices, her eyes lingering on the least expensive items. "You can order anything you like," he said softly. She shook her head. "I'm fine, thank you." There was something in the way she said it, polite, yet proud. It wasn't false humility, it was dignity, the kind that comes from fighting battles no one else sees. As the night went on, conversation began to flow. She talked about her job at the small community library, about how she loved stories that reminded people there was still kindness in the world. He told her about his company, though carefully leaving out that he was the CEO, a detail he'd chosen to hide that night. He wanted to be seen for who he was, not for what he owned. And somehow, she saw right through the walls he'd spent years building. When they laughed together over dessert, Ethan realized how rare it felt to laugh without pretending. He couldn't remember the last time he'd felt something so real. But just as the night began to feel perfect, he noticed something in her eyes, a shadow, like she was fighting to stay in this moment, even though part of her was already slipping away. As they stood outside, the winter wind brushed her hair against her face. She pulled her coat tighter, trying to hide the tear in the sleeve. "It's late," she said softly. "Thank you for tonight." It was nice. Ethan wanted to say more, to ask her to stay, to tell her she didn't need to leave yet, but something in her tone stopped him. She gave a small smile, whispered goodbye, and disappeared into the night before he could ask for her number. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He replayed every moment, every word, every glance, the way she'd smiled through her nervousness, the way her eyes lit up when she spoke about helping children read. He felt something stir inside him, something he hadn't felt in years, the need to know why she carried so much silence behind her smile. The next morning, he asked his assistant to find the woman who worked at the downtown library. It took days, but finally, he found her again, standing in front of the library's broken entrance door, holding a box of books. When he offered to help, she looked surprised, almost embarrassed. "You again?" she said, smiling shyly. "Didn't think CEOs spent time around places like this." Her words hit him like a whisper of truth. She'd known who he was all along. She told him she didn't come to the date expecting anything. A friend had set it up, and she almost canceled because she couldn't afford a dress, or even a taxi. "I didn't want you to think I was someone who wanted your money," she said quietly. "That's why I left early. I didn't fit in your world." Ethan shook his head. "Maybe it's my world that doesn't fit yours," he said. Over the next few weeks, they kept meeting, coffee after work, walks in the park, shared laughter over simple things. Slowly, Ethan began to see life outside the glass towers he'd built. She showed him how kindness could be richer than wealth, and how quiet courage could build more than empires. But even as their hearts drew closer, Claire's secret began to surface. She'd been struggling to support her younger brother, who was ill. Every cent she earned went to his medicine. and she'd been skipping meals to make ends meet. She didn't tell him out of pride. She didn't want to be pitied. The day Ethan found out, he showed up at her apartment with groceries and medicine, but she refused to take them. "I don't need saving," she said, tears in her eyes. "I just need someone to believe in me." And that was when he realized that she wasn't asking for charity. She was asking for respect. Ethan made her a promise that night, not as a CEO, but as a man who finally understood what love truly meant. He offered her a job at his company's literacy foundation, not because he wanted to help her, but because she belonged there. She accepted reluctantly at first, but soon became the soul of the project, inspiring hundreds of children to dream bigger. Months passed, and as the city prepared for winter again, Ethan took her to the same restaurant where it all began. This time, she arrived not in a worn coat, but in a simple blue dress. Yet to him, she looked exactly the same, not because of what she wore, but because of who she was. When he knelt down and pulled out a small velvet box, she gasped. "Ethan," he took her hand gently. "The first night I met you, you walked in looking like you had nothing," he said, his voice trembling. "But what I saw was everything I'd ever wanted. You taught me that love isn't about what we have, but who we are when no one's watching." Tears filled her eyes as she whispered yes. The restaurant erupted in applause, but all Ethan heard was her heartbeat against his chest, steady, real, and full of life. And for the first time in years, the man who once had everything finally realized he'd been missing the most important thing of all: a love that saw beyond appearances, beyond wealth, beyond pride, the kind of love that changes you quietly, forever. Because sometimes, the people who look like they have nothing are the ones who give you everything you'll ever need.